Hello and welcome to Heirhein Castle of Chapter 2 of my 0% Growth LTC run. We are currently coming to Nodion's relief and fighting off all the cavalry. Well, from playing the game normally, this is a very easy fight, even on 0% growth. There are a few minor objectives here. First of all, Elliot, the Duke Knight you see over there, carries a silver lance, and the only person capable of using that is Quan, which helps a lot later on in the chapter, so it's a priority for him to get that weapon. Secondly, even though it's just a small fight, it's hard to get rid of. You can't get rid of all the enemies in one fell swoop, giving them an opportunity to attack units that are weaker defensively, namely Ethlin and Midir, and I really don't want either of them taking significant damage because this is one of the few Fire Emblem games without healing items, so if Ethlin gets damaged, she will not get healed until after Anthony Castle later on, by which point she's useless, and if she's hit once, then she's one-shotted by the vast majority of future enemies, making the rest of the map much harder. And if Midir doesn't want to get wounded too seriously, because if he dips below 25 HP, he can no longer proc charge, which is very important to set up several kills later on. Also, Lachesis, the unit on the castle who's recently recruited, needs to get promoted by the beginning of Chapter 4 to use the rescue staff at 9 move, which saves a bunch of turns, so another priority is to get her a bunch of experience. Finally, it's important to move Ethlin forward far enough so that she'll be in position for heals later on, but the issue with this is that Elliot, the boss who Quan just got a lucky continue off on, is that the boss one hit kills her, so putting her that far forward is risky, but thankfully with a bit of rigging and careful positioning, the AI can work out so that for some reason the AI is stupid and attacks Quan. So as you can see, all of these objectives were met. Midir was harmed, but not so much so that Ethlin couldn't heal him, she herself wasn't damaged, and Lachesis managed to grab one kill. Now, the second fight with all the Armor Knights is somewhat more challenging. On a normal playthrough, it isn't that tough because your characters are becoming more powerful, but at this point in the game, all the Armor Knights have high health, high enough damage to 2 to 3 shot most of your characters, and they have very high hit rates, usually above 80, which means they cannot be taken on from the front. So to deal with this, I'm going to have to slow down a little bit from what would be done on playthrough with growths and try and skirt along the edges and dodge past them. This is done through soon sending Quan a bit forward to bait out one of them, bringing them all forward, then having Quan and Sigurd charge through. The reason why I can't fight all of them at once is I simply don't have the firepower without waiting for infantry, and since I'm aiming for the lowest turn count, this is very challenging. You saw just here that Ethlin sold her staff for a relive staff. This is because the relive staff gives 20 experience instead of 15, which makes it far easier to get her promoted on time. And Ira is going to lose in the arena here. This isn't for rigging purposes so much as it is to give Lexus someone to heal so that she's constantly getting healing experience every single turn, which is once again necessary because as I'm going at a fast pace, she doesn't have the most time to level by Chapter 4, especially because without growth she's also weaker and has more trouble clearing the arena. So here Ethlin heals up Quan, and she goes forward. I checked the positioning very carefully to make sure that she wasn't in range of either of the ballista. They didn't have the highest hit rates, but when possible I like to make my strategies more reliable, and Ethlin, she'll need to be able to take a hit later on in the chapter. So she needs to be safe. Unfortunately, Quan with the Silver Lance, his might is just short of where it needs to be to one round most armors with a continue proc. The only armors he can actually kill with a continue proc and the Silver Lance on 0% growths are the sword users. So he unfortunately can't fully snipe some enemies. So now you'll be getting to the parts where there'll be long bits of RNG abuse. I'll tell you when to skip until. I'm not going to commentate on these because there wouldn't be anything to say. So skip until 6:05 at this point. So now you see the beauty of charge. Even though it takes Meteor 5 hits to kill this unit, by rigging 2 consecutive charge procs, he can just straight up one round it, even though he's pretty weak. Rigging is what makes Meteor one of the most useful characters. Now skip until 6:40. And Norse uses his Iron Lance to finish off that Lance user. It's unreliable, but that's how it is. And here Quan takes advantage of his Silver Lance after getting healed. Ethlyn is really dutiful about healing her husband. He can just continue to destroy this sword user and continue on through, letting them both break through. It's very important to go around because the boss here is actually quite tough. Lots of health, great shield, which can completely nullify an attack, and really high attack power. So I'm making sure to really just avoid him completely, which you'll see soon when I highlight the enemy ranges. So the convenient thing about sending Quan up there is that the AI in this game tends to cohere in the formation it starts whenever possible. So when only one unit in the formation could attack Quan at the beginning, it made it so that all the other units that weren't in range continued in their super wide formation, which meant that almost none of the armors became in range of my party, which means that there weren't as many enemies to deal with, which meant that even with my weak offense, they were manageable. So you saw earlier I had Daedra by the live staff. That was Laxus's. This is important for her because a bunch of infantry units, including Laxus and Daedra, will be bum rushing through that choke point, and due to the enemies that show up, having a lot of healers is very important. So just Laxus wouldn't be enough. So once again, here I'm RNG abusing some more because coming up are 2 very unreliable boss kills. This first part is just Quan. Softening up the castle guard so that on the next turn Sigurd can seize. But what you're going to see now is actually some long RNG abuse that you're going to probably want to skip. So come back at 10:10 in the video. So now we have Nadir use charge once again. This is really unreliable because he needs to hit the boss 4 times, which requires proccing a charge and having Great Shield not trigger once, so that Ethlyn, with a light sword critical, can finish him off. It's important that she gets the kill because he drops a return ring, which is a useful item for Ethlyn to pass down to her son, Leaf, who is the 2nd generation's equivalent of Lachesis, essentially the one who ends up using the rescue staff, and it helps him get levels quickly later on, which I'll explain once I get to chapter 7. It's a long way off at this point, but even this early she needs it. And everyone else is just charging past. Unfortunately, you'll see later that Lex has to run away. The positioning just worked out so that if he charged further forward, he could get killed, and I'm not sure because I haven't planned everything else out, but I think there's one last thing I need him to do in this run, in chapter 3, so had to keep him alive. And here, I'm RNG abusing. This isn't to make it easier for people to survive, it's actually to make it so that Finn gets hit by Ballista, because he's not the first priority of the AI. While this seems a bit silly that I'd rig something like this, it's very important to set up some prayer abuse in the next chapter. Essentially, by having him get hit by that, I can knock him down to 1 health, which means that his evade skyrockets because of prayer, and this really helps with the clear for the next chapter. So now, this is some really long RNG abuse. Wait until 12:58 to come back to the video. So Quan needs to land a javelin hit on this boss, Ethlyn needs to land a light sword critical, and Sigurd needs to hit with the steel lance to finish off. So it's a very rigging-based boss fight. And so my turn count for this castle is 9 turns. An 8 turn is possible with growths, but it requires just straight up bum rushing the armor formation with Quan and Sigurd. You have to attack it directly, and their defenses and health and attack on 0% growths are just not up to the task. So short of spending days rigging in the arena, this is the lowest turn count for Heirhein Castle possible. And this takes, that attack took a lot of rigging because Ethlyn, the boss needs to miss her because she'll need the health later on, and there's no way of getting healed. And Great Shield can also activate. So that's Heirhein Castle completed in 9 turns. Thank you.